You know what? In my 30 years on the bench, I thought I'd seen everything. Murder cases, million-dollar lawsuits, celebrity scandals, you name it, I've judged it. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for the day two women walked into my courtroom fighting over a hot tub cover that got destroyed because one of them literally climbed onto it to escape a gigantic dog. I'm Judge Judy Scheinlin, and let me tell you about one of the most ridiculous cases I've ever heard. This is the true story of what happens when friendship, two massive dogs, and a backyard meet and greet go spectacularly wrong. Picture this, two women, former friends, standing in my courtroom, looking like they wanted to strangle each other. On my left, we had the plaintiff, let's call her Mrs. Martinez. She owned a hot tub, had a big backyard, and was the proud owner of a Mastiff Cane Corso. Now, if you don't know what that is, let me paint you a picture. These aren't your average fluffy lap dogs. These are behemoths. We're talking about dogs that weigh as much as a full-grown adult human, with jaws that could crack a coconut like it's a peanut. On my right stood the defendant, Miss Hopkins. She also happened to own one of these massive beasts. And here's where it gets interesting. These two geniuses had decided it would be a brilliant idea to mate their dogs and make some puppies, because apparently the world needs more 100-pound monsters running around. I looked at both of them and said, "Oh, this is such a silly case," and trust me, I meant every word. Let me set the scene for you. Mrs. Martinez and Miss Hopkins had been friends for a while. They'd hung out together, had coffee, done all the normal friend stuff. Miss Hopkins had been to Mrs. Martinez's house about 3 times before this incident. Sometimes she'd been in the backyard, sometimes in the house. Normal visits, nothing crazy. But here's what made this day different. This was going to be the first time their dogs would meet. Think of it like an arranged marriage in the dog world. Before you commit to having puppies together, you want to make sure the couple actually gets along, right? So they planned this little backyard rendezvous, a doggy engagement party, if you will. The date was June 22nd, a Sunday afternoon, right after church, because nothing says holy day like planning to breed massive attack dogs in your backyard. Mrs. Martinez told me they arrived around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. The stage was set. The backyard was ready, and somewhere in that yard sat an innocent hot tub, completely unaware of the chaos about to unfold. Now here's where the stories start to diverge, and this is the part I love. Two people, same incident, completely different versions of reality. Welcome to my world. I turned to Miss Hopkins and said, "I'm going to stop you right there. Miss Hopkins is going to tell me what caused her to hop on the hot tub, and boy, did she have a story." Miss Hopkins jumped right in with a correction. For one thing, she said, looking me dead in the eye, "I was never in the company of her dog on any of those 3 previous visits." Wait, what? Mrs. Martinez had just told me they'd been around the dog before, but Miss Hopkins was adamant she'd never met this dog until June 22nd. I cut through the confusion. So what you're telling me is prior to June 22nd, you had not been in the company of the dog? Never, she confirmed. Okay, so first meeting between woman and beast? Got it? This was already getting interesting. Miss Hopkins continued her story, and I could see the anxiety creeping back into her face as she relived it. We went through the back of their property where they were keeping the dog, she explained, and I see this big dog. I'm like, "Oh, that dog kind of big." I had to laugh at that. "Well, it's the same size as your dog, isn't it?" No, she insisted. "This dog is bigger. It had more height." Now I was curious. "How much does your dog weigh?" Mrs. Martinez jumped in. "Like 95 pounds. "How much does yours weigh?" I asked Mrs. Martinez. 120 pounds. He's still a puppy. A puppy? This puppy weighed 120 pounds. I looked at Miss Hopkins and said, "So, much bigger." "Yes," she agreed, and I could see the fear in her eyes even now, months later. Here's where things got wild. Miss Hopkins walked me through the whole terrifying sequence of events, and honestly, I could picture it like a movie playing in my head. I was immediately nervous, she admitted, but I was already there, you know? I'm a big girl. I went there anyway. The dogs started getting acquainted, which is a polite way of saying they started sizing each other up like boxers in a ring. And then Mrs. Martinez's dog, the 120-pound puppy, got aggressive. "He's coming after my dog," Miss Hopkins said, her voice rising with the memory, "and my dog is moving around trying to get away from him, so I'm backing up while they're getting acquainted." Smart move, I thought. When two massive dogs start getting rowdy, the last place you want to be is in the middle of them. "My dog is coming towards me because I'm the mom," she started to say. I stopped her right there. "Don't tell me why, because that calls for the operation of your dog's mind. I don't deal in animal psychology, just the facts." So there's Miss Hopkins backing up in this backyard, two giant dogs getting more and more aggressive with each other, and she's desperately trying to get out of the danger zone. "I'm calling for my husband," she told me. "Daryl, get the dog." I'm trying to see what's going on with the dog, so I keep moving back. My dog is coming toward me, her dog is coming toward my dog, and here's the critical moment, folks, the moment that would lead to this lawsuit and bring these two women into my courtroom. "I'm just moving back and moving around. I don't know what's really behind me," Miss Hopkins explained. "I didn't know what that was. I'm just backing up." Her dog was still getting more aggressive with my dog. Then it happened. I scooted back and I scooted onto this like little thing. I hopped on the tub. It was like I was barely on the tub, but it wasn't over yet. Those dogs were still going at it, and Miss Hopkins was in full survival mode. As the dog got more aggressive with my dog, I raised my legs up and put my legs on the back more of the tub, and that's when she heard it. Crack. I said, "Oh, I think I done cracked something," she recalled. It was so light I didn't even know what it was at first. Now you'd think at this point 2 reasonable adults would talk it out, right? Maybe Miss Hopkins offers to pay for the damage, they shake hands, move on with their lives. The puppies don't get made, everybody goes home. But no, of course not, because then I wouldn't have a case, would I? Mrs. Martinez told Miss Hopkins how much the cover cost, and Miss Hopkins had questions. Good questions, actually. If it cost that much, Miss Hopkins argued, why did it crack so soon when I barely put any weight on it? Fair point, I thought, but that wasn't going to get her out of paying for the damage. What really got me was what Mrs. Martinez was asking for. I looked at her and said, according to you, which is ludicrous, you say because you haven't been able to use your hot tub for the last month, you want her to pay for your pain and suffering. 3 months, Your Honor, Mrs. Martinez corrected me. 3 months of not having a hot tub, and she wanted compensation for her pain and suffering. I couldn't help myself. I don't care, I said, and the whole courtroom burst out laughing. Now here's where it got interesting from a legal standpoint. This was Mrs. Martinez's home, and any reasonable homeowner has insurance. So I asked her directly, do you have homeowner's insurance? Yes, I do, Your Honor. Did you put in a claim to your homeowners? No, I did not. Bingo. This is what I live for, the moment when the plaintiff's case starts to fall apart. Why not? I demanded. She started hemming and hawing. I sought the information on filing it. My deductible was too expensive. My husband and I, just a second, I cut her off. Who insures you? Allstate. And your deductible, according to your contract with Allstate, is how much? $1,000. There it was. Her deductible was $1,000. So instead of going through proper channels, she decided to sue her friend in small claims court. Brilliant. But I needed to see the numbers. When had you purchased this hot tub cover? April. A month before. I'd like to see the bill for it. Mrs. Martinez handed over the paperwork, and Miss Hopkins piped up. Me too. I never saw it. Smart woman, that Miss Hopkins. Always asked to see the receipts. The sales order was dated April 17, 2014. Mrs. Martinez had bought a brand new cover for her hot tub just a couple months before this incident. I had just purchased a brand new cover due to the previous winter. Mrs. Martinez explained, the winter destroyed the old top the same way. Wait, from the snow we had. So this cover had replaced another cover that had been destroyed by snow. Interesting. These covers apparently weren't built to last. I looked at the receipt. You purchased a new one for $250. Yes, there it is. $250. Not cheap, but not the end of the world either. But then Miss Hopkins asked the million-dollar question. So why is she asking for $500? Mrs. Martinez tried to justify it. Because it's been going on for 3 months, Your Honor. Bacteria, mildew, all kinds of stuff has happened to the tub. My husband and I, $250. I cut her off. You should have bought a new cover. I know, I couldn't. We've been off work, Your Honor. And there was the real issue. They couldn't afford to replace it themselves. So they let it sit there for 3 months, getting worse and worse, hoping to squeeze more money out of their former friend. I'd heard enough. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $250. Thank you. Mrs. Martinez seemed satisfied. Okay then. Mrs. Hopkins nodded. I don't mind at all. Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate it. That's all we wanted, Mrs. Martinez said. But I wasn't born yesterday. No, what you wanted, actually, I started to say. Mrs. Martinez tried to interrupt. You didn't let me. Just a second, I said firmly. Actually, you just should have kept your mouth quiet, because what you wanted was $1,500 for your pain and suffering. Goodbye. You know what this case taught me? Sometimes the silliest disputes reveal the deepest truths about human nature. These two women were friends. They'd spent time together, shared meals, made plans, and all of that fell apart over a $250 piece of vinyl. Was it Miss Hopkins's fault that she stepped on the hot tub cover? Technically, yes. She was the one who climbed on it. But was she wrong to back away from 2 massive dogs that were getting aggressive? Absolutely not. Any reasonable person would have done the same thing. Should Mrs. Martinez have just filed an insurance claim or replaced the cover herself instead of suing her friend? Probably. But pride, money troubles, and 3 months of watching her hot tub collect bacteria made her dig in her heels. The dogs, they never did mate. No puppies were made that day. Just bad feelings and a broken friendship over a cracked hot tub cover. In my courtroom, I see the best and worst of humanity. I see people at their most desperate, their most angry, their most ridiculous. This case was all 3 rolled into one absurd package. 2 giant dogs, 1 terrified woman, 1 cracked hot tub cover, and 2 former friends who couldn't work it out without dragging it into court. That's justice, folks. Not always pretty, rarely simple, but always fair. And that's exactly how I like it. This is Judge Judy Scheindlin, reminding you, sometimes the smallest disputes teach us the biggest lessons. Court adjourned.